20% in earners in the state of New Hampshire pay 8% in taxes, local and state. The top 20% pay 2%. An income tax would fix that so everybody would pay the same percentage. Don't you have a problem with us taxing the lowest 20%, the highest?
I remember, see, I read history. Here's the problem I have with it. Back when they passed the federal income tax, it was only 1%, and only the rich will pay. You had to make income of $5,000. Well, back then, most people barely made $1,000 a year. Okay, now look, I am now, under those standards, considered wealthy. Let me tell you something. It's just my wife and myself, and we live on less than $30,000 a year. So.
Under the last Republican, Dwight Eisenhower, the tax rate on millionaires was 92% of their last dollar. And as my dad said, who was a businessman, I don't hear them complaining. Now they earn 10 times as much in purchasing power and pay 0. And that's also so in New Hampshire. They live in rich communities which have no children, and their tax rate on their house is half what it is to the poor guy living in a tenement in a city in New Hampshire. That's just the facts.
I was wondering if you're in favor of eliminating those exemptions for the elderly in those towns for property tax relief.
No, I'm not. And the reason I'm not for eliminating those exemptions because I firmly believe that we should pay for the services we use. And the elderly have, over their time, have paid. And the handicapped, they don't have a chance, really, because there are various handicaps. And we as society, we have a way of giving them, quote, a circuit breaker to hold that off. In fact, my town, if you're a long-time resident and because you become poor because of a disability or whatever, they will not take your house. But that's a conscious decision the town and the selectmen have made. So.
Just normally when you have an exemption for one group, another group has to pick up that cost, and it's usually young families with young children who are least able to pick up the extra property tax that's being put onto them because the town fathers have decided to exempt another population who they feel
well, it's not the town fathers.
Well,
the people have to vote on it. Yeah. So the people of the town have agreed to this. Okay. The other, and I understand your point on cost shifting. We also do that with conservation easements. We also do that with current use. But current use is constitutional. The people of New Hampshire voted into our Constitution to have current use. The legislature wrote the laws to implement current use. If we want open environment, then somehow these environments have to be kept open.
David?
Hi. I was hoping to ask this to every candidate. I don't know if it could be put on the question list, but I was going to ask the same question I asked the last person, and who would you be supporting? And I'm hoping for one single, short and sweet reason why you'll be supporting that person for president.
I support Gary Johnson, and the sole reason is we've got to balance our budget, because if we don't balance our budget, bankruptcy is a hard way for a nation to go down. And that will hurt the wealthy, the poor, everyone. People who save for future retirements, it will hurt them the most. Because hyperinflation destroys all wealth, destroys all savings, destroys all investments. And if you don't have money for investments, you can't invest in new buildings into future of your community.
Gary, did you have a question?
I'll save it for later.
Okay, Daryl?
Do you support fair ballot access, and what are your proposals if you have any?
I do, and again, I would support anything in the legislature. You have to remember the governor is not a dictator. The governor can only say yay or nay to what the legislature passed. I could encourage them, by telling them what I would find acceptable, and if they pass a bill to me that was acceptable, I would sign it. But the purpose of the governor is to limit the legislature from going overboard on things.
Well, what do you find acceptable, and what would you ask them to pass?
I would find acceptable equal access for all. I think that's the only proper way to live within the Article 11 of the New Hampshire Constitution.
Any further questions? Okay.